Hello dear students, in this video I will explain the process of cell respiration or cellular respiration. Process of cellular respiration, it is an aerobic process. It means it requires oxygen for the process, and we know that this process takes place in mitochondria. As we know, the mitochondria is a bean-shaped double membrane organelle. It has two membranes. The inner membrane has many foldings like this. We call it inner membrane. Or it has another name in which we called it cristae. So this is the inner membrane. Okay, or we called it cristae, okay, and the other membrane we called it outer membrane. And the process of cellular respiration, it takes place in mitochondria, as we said, that in two stages. We have two stages of this process. The first one we called it Krebs cycle. Krebs cycle also has another name in which we call it citric acid cycle. And the second stage of the cellular respiration is electron transport chain. And the most important point about these two processes, in which we have to know that Krebs cycle, it takes place inside the matrix of mitochondria. This is the fluid part of the mitochondria. This space we call it matrix, okay? These spaces, as I am writing in green color and drawing it. So this is the matrix in which the Krebs cycle process takes place. While electron transport chain, it takes place in the inner membrane of mitochondria, or we called it cristae, as I mentioned here. Okay, also we called it cristae. So the aim of the cellular respiration that we have to know is producing energy in the form of ATP. So where do we get this energy? From eating food. While we are eating, our purpose is for getting energy from that food. So the food, when we are eating, it will be digested in our mouth by an enzyme we call it amylase. Then it will enter into our stomach. Okay, after that it will enter into our intestine. In the intestine, the food, let's say it is starch. Okay, the food that we have is starch. So it's a sugar. It's made up of glucose unit. This glucose will be absorbed in the intestine after digestion process is completed. Then the glucose molecule will move to the body cells in order to be used as a source of energy, in which that cell can make its physiological and chemical activities. So now we have a glucose, okay, that's moving to the body cell. This is a cell, okay, that contains a mitochondria. This is mitochondria, okay. Let me draw it here. So this is our mitochondria. So the glucose will arrive inside. Now the glucose inside the cell. Before entering into the mitochondria, the glucose will going through a process we called it glycolysis. Okay, it's like a preparation for the cellular respiration, the process of glycolysis. We have to know that glycolysis takes place inside the cytoplasm of the cell, and it is an aerobic process. Okay, anaerobic. I wrote anaerobic. It's like one word. Okay, it's not like anaerobic like this. It means it doesn't require oxygen. So simply, guys, the glucose molecule that we have, okay, after digestion, glucose, sorry, it will enter into the cell. This is our cell, okay. Inside the cell, the glucose, it will be converted into 2 pyruvate, okay, pyruvate, or we call it pyruvic acid. The process of converting glucose to pyruvate or pyruvic acid, we called it glycolysis. As I mentioned, the process of glycolysis, it is an aerobic process and it takes place inside the cytoplasm of the cell. These are important points about the glycolysis process, and anaerobic, it means it doesn't require oxygen. So this step, glycolysis process, it's like a preparation for the cellular respiration. Then these 2 pyruvate, or we can say pyruvic acid, they will enter into the mitochondria. This is our mitochondria, in which we have 2 membranes, as I said. Okay, the inner membrane has many foldings, or we can say cristae has many foldings. So the first stage of cellular respiration, as we said that, we called it Krebs cycle. I will write KC, it means Krebs cycle. The Krebs cycle takes place inside the matrix, we said that. Okay, this is the first stage of the cellular respiration, in which we need oxygen in this process, in the process of cellular respiration. The second stage of cellular respiration, is electron transport chain. As you see, I wrote in the inner membrane, in the cristae, because it takes place inside the cristae. As I mentioned here, I said that Krebs cycle or citric acid cycle, it takes place inside the matrix, and the electron transport chain, it takes place inside the inner membrane or cristae. Okay, so this finally, guys, as a result of the cellular respiration, the aim of it is producing energy in the form of ATP molecule. So this is the basic and principle of the cellular respiration process. Uh, Now let us start by solving the question that we have. So now let us start by solving the question that we have in this chapter. Let us start by the first question. It says all of the following are correct about the cell respiration except, okay, so we have five choices. Among these five choices, four of them are true about the cell respiration or cellular respiration. The first one, it says it is an oxidative process. Yes, it is an oxidative process. We know that. All plants and animals carry out respiration all the time. Exactly. All plants and animals carrying out this process, and all the time they need this process by the day and night. It consisted of glycolysis, Krebs cycle, and electron transport chain. We know that these are the three main steps of cellular respiration. Oxygen molecules are pumped across the cristae membrane to the outer compartment. Oxygen molecules are not pumped, but instead of oxygen, we have hydrogen. We have to know that hydrogen atoms are pumped across the cristae membrane in order to make a gradient, in order to make the flow of this hydrogen ions through a protein channel which we call the ATP synthase. As a result, ATP molecules will be produced, which it is the aim and the final, the most important result of the cellular respiration. So the answer for the question is D. D is the answer for the question. But we have to read the last choice. It says most ATP is produced during the cell respiration as a result of electron transport chain and chemiosmosis. Yes, uh, as we said that we have glycolysis, Krebs cycle, and electron transport chain in the process of cellular respiration. And most of the ATP will be produced during electron transport chain and chemiosmosis, and this is also true. So the answer for the question, as I mentioned, it is D. Now let us move to the second question. Glycolysis. Let us see. Glycolysis produces water, requires oxygen, doesn't require oxygen, and doesn't produce water molecule. Involves an electron transport chain. It doesn't involve any electron transport chain. So these choices are not true for the glycolysis. It's a breakdown of glucose to produce pyruvic acid. Exactly. During the glycolysis, as I mentioned, It's the breakdown of glucose into pyruvic acid, or we can say pyruvate. Pyruvate or pyruvic acid are the same. It produces carbon dioxide. Also, this is not true. Uh, Carbon dioxide will be produced during cellular respiration, not during the glycolysis process, because glycolysis is anaerobic process. Now let us move to the third question. The electron transport chain is located in. Where does this process takes place in the cristae of mitochondria. Yeah, takes place in the cristae, or we can say in the inner membrane. Inner membrane of mitochondria. Okay. Inside the cytoplasm, we know that glycolysis takes place. In the outer membrane of mitochondria, we don't have anything. In the inner matrix, the process of Krebs cycle, or we can say uh, the citric acid cycle will take place. And Golgi body is an organelle which is responsible for sorting, modifying, and packaging the protein. So it does not have any relation with the electron transport chain. So the answer for the question is B. Okay, cytoplasm and inner matrix are also not related with the answer of the question. So I hope it's clear. Now let us move to the fourth question. We have NADH, which it is a molecule carrying protons to the electron transport chain. Those molecules will be transported from Krebs cycle to the electron transport chain, and they have ability to produce 3 ATP molecules. This is the rule we have to know. And also we have FADH2, in which it produces 2 ATP molecules, okay? While NADH produces 3 ATP molecules. So that's about the fourth question. Now let us read the question 5. Which of the following is the most important thing that occurs during the cell respiration? Let us see, what do we have? Which of the following is the most important thing that occurs during the process of cell respiration or cell respiration? We have CO2 is produced during the Krebs cycle. Yes, CO2 is produced, but it's not the most important thing that occurs during the cell respiration. We have protons and electrons combined with oxygen to form water. We have oxygen is released. Oxygen is not released, as we know that oxygen is used during the process of cell respiration as a reactant. But CO2 will be released. A proton gradient is created. Yes, a proton gradient is created, but not the aim. And the most important thing that is, occurs in the cell respiration is producing ATP. So ATP is produced during this process. So the answer for the question 5 is E, the aim. And the most important thing during the process of cell respiration is to produce ATP to carry out cellular and physical and biophysical and biochemical reactions in the cell. Now let us read the question 5. in which it says the loss of electron is known as we have reduction, we have oxidation, we have redox. We know we have to know that redox is the combination of oxidation and reduction process. We have electron transport chain and we have lysis. But the loss of electron is known as oxidation. So the answer for the question is oxidation. Okay, while reduction is gain of electron. Okay, while oxidation is the loss of electrons. Okay, we call it oxidation. Redox, it's like both oxidation and reduction. Uh, this is the answer for the question, which it is oxidation. Now let us move to the seventh question that we have. The immediate result of the electron transport chain is water is produced, ATP is produced, lactic acid is produced. We know that lactic acid will be produced during fermentation. So this is not the answer for the question. Glucose is broken down into two pyruvic acid molecules and is not related to the cellular respiration process, but it is happening during the glycolysis process. A proton gradient is created. Yes, that's the answer for the question, because when this proton gradient is created, then after that, which is the immediate result of electron transport chain, then ATP molecules will be produced. And what is produced during, like we know that during Krebs cycle process, and the ATP is the final result of all of these processes during the cellular respiration. So the answer for the question, guys, is, as we know that it is E, in which a proton gradient. Gradient, it means difference in the concentration. Difference in the concentration of these hydrogen ions across the crystal membrane. After that, ATP will be created. ATP will be produced. Okay? So, I hope it's clear. And now let us move to the question 8. The role of oxygen. So that's very important, in which you have to know what's the role of the oxygen, okay, in aerobic respiration. It means in the cellular respiration or aerobic respiration. To transport carbon dioxide, it's not related to anything. As a final proton and electron acceptor in the electron transport chain. So, guys, if we know that if we will see the direct or the diagram of the electron transport chain, we will see that oxygen serves as a final proton and electron acceptor in the electron transport chain. During this process, oxygen will enter into the process in which it serves as final, in which the last acceptor for the protons and electrons during this process. So it's the main role of the oxygen in the electron transport chain. So the answer for the question is B. To transport glycolysis, to transport electrons in glycolysis. Guys, we don't have oxygen during glycolysis process. To provide electrons for the electron transport chain, it's not providing electrons. It is like acceptor for the electron. Most important in the Krebs cycle, It's not related to the Krebs cycle. So again, I am saying that oxygen is the most important electron and proton acceptor in the electron transport chain. I hope it's clear. Now let us move to the ninth question. Which of the following is a waste product of aerobic cell respiration? So, guys, we know that we have A, B, C, and I think we have D and E. Yes, we have D and E. Now let's move to the question. It says, which of the following is a waste product of aerobic cell respiration? So we know that we know the chemical equation or reaction of the cell respiration, in which we have glucose molecule C6H12O6, okay, plus oxygen, because we need oxygen for for this process, as we say, aerobic. It will be CO2 plus H2O. So these are the product, or we can say the waste product, okay? And these are the reactants. These are the reactants. And these are the product. But which products? They are like waste product, okay? So the answer, as we see, it's carbon dioxide and H2O. So it means water and carbon dioxide. So it means 1 and 2. So which one is the choice for the question, or the answer for the question? It is C, because it is 1 and 2 only. ATP, regarding ATP, guys, and this is not a waste product. It's like the most important molecule that provides energy. It is the aim of the cellular respiration process. So this is the answer for the question, which it is C. It means water and carbon dioxide. Now let us move to the question 8. Sorry, question 10. We have these 3 circles that represent 3 major processes in aerobic respiration. So, guys, as we see that we have glucose molecule, okay? Glucose molecule will enter into the process of cell respiration. As a result, carbon dioxide and H2O will be produced. So process A, before reading the questions, we have to know that process A, it is glycolysis, the first process, in which it takes place inside the cytoplasm. Okay, this is the process A. Process B, in which it is Krebs cycle, or we can say citric acid cycle, and it takes place in the matrix of mitochondria. Okay, the last process, process C, it is electron transport chain. I am writing as ETC, the abbreviation of electron transport chain. And this process takes place in the inner membrane, in the inner membrane of mitochondria, or we can say in the cristae of mitochondria. So now let us read the question. Process A represents what? It represents glycolysis. Okay, we know that this is glycolysis. And the second part of the question, or question 11, it says where where does it occurs? Process A occurs where? In which part? Okay, as I mentioned, it takes place in the mito, in the cytoplasm, sorry, in the cytoplasm. And I wrote it here before, as I mentioned that takes place inside the cytoplasm of the cell. Okay, so the answer for the question is D. For question 11 is D. The process that takes place inside the cytoplasm. Now let us move to the process C. What's process C? As I mentioned, it is the third process in which it is the electron transport chain. And this process, guys, it takes place inside the inner membrane of mitochondria. Or we can say it takes place inside the cristae of mitochondria. Now let us move to the question 13. Which of the following is correct about these processes? Process A requires energy. It means the process of glycolysis requires energy. Process B requires energy. And we have process C requires energy. Okay, and we have process A depends on a gradient, and process B releases oxygen. So guys, we know that process A, the first process, okay, process A, in which it is glycolysis. It requires energy. Process of glycolysis requires energy, and as a result, 2 ATPs will be produced, 13. Which is true about process C. It requires water, and it is universal. It is the way all organisms produce energy. I think it's not used by all the organisms, because we have some anaerobic organisms, so we cannot say it's universal. It involves the membrane structure of ATP synthase. Here, this is the most important protein, or we can say enzyme, okay, in the process. It's one of the most important proteins or enzymes that it has role for making ATP from its name, ATP synthase. So its function is synthesizing ATP molecule. It occurs in animals, not in plants. We have it in the plant. It results in the byproduct of pyruvic acid. This is not true also. Pyruvic acid will be produced during the process A, which it was glycolysis process. So the answer for the question is C. It involves the membrane structure ATP synthetase molecule. Okay. So that's about the process C, or cellular respiration, we can say. Now let us move to the question 15. Which is true about process B? Process B, as we know that it is the Krebs cycle, or we can say it is citric acid cycle. It produces most of the energy of all of the processes. This is not true. Most of the energy of the process, it will be produced during electron transport chain. It produces energy by chemiosmosis. Again, this is not happening during process B, but it is happening during process C. It's the production of energy is explained by the law of diffusion. It does not have any relation with the process B, with the law of diffusion. The raw material is pyruvic acid, and we have at least carbon dioxide. Exactly, guys. We know that carbon dioxide is released during which stage? During process B, or we can say Krebs cycle. I am writing as Krebs cycle as KC, or we can say citric acid cycle. Okay, so carbon dioxide, which it is one of the waste products of the cellular respiration, it is produced during the Krebs cycle, while the water, which it is the second waste product, it will be produced during the electron transport chain. So the answer for the question is E for the question 15. Question 16, it says, which of the following probably evolved first? As we know that it is glycolysis. Okay, Krebs cycle into the second stage, chemiosmosis and electron transport chain are happening during the third stage of the electron transport chain, and citric acid cycle is Krebs cycle. They are the same, which they are the second stage. Okay, so they are the same. And the answer for the question is glycolysis. It's happening or evolving first. Okay, let us move to the question number 17. All of the following are correct about ATP synthase except. So let us know what's ATP synthase. As I mentioned, it's a protein, or it is an enzyme that's found in the inner membrane of mitochondria, and it's a protein. Let's say this is the inner membrane. Okay, this is inner membrane. I am writing as IM, it means inner membrane. IM. In the inner membrane, we have a protein. Okay, this is this protein channel or ATP synthetase channel. Okay, it's a channel in which ATP molecules are producing through it. It is a molecule located within the crystal membrane. Yes, it's located there. It spins like a turbine. Exactly. It spins like a turbine in the inner membrane. It means like crosses the membrane. So it's true. It binds a phosphate to a molecule of ADP. Yes, we have ADP, so it will bind the phosphate to ADP to make ADP to ATP. So diphosphate becomes triphosphate because one phosphate has been added. It's an important component of glycolysis. Yes, guys, this is the answer for the question. ATP synthetase, which is found in the crystal membrane of the mitochondria, it will never be a part of the glycolysis process. So the answer for the question is D. It's a function. This function depends on proton gradient. As we mentioned that when this proton gradient is formed across the inner membrane, then the ATP synthetase will be activated and it will produce ATP molecules. So the answer for the question is D. It's an important component of glycolysis. This is not true because the question says all are correct except. So one of them is not correct. Now let us move to the question 18. The breakdown of glucose into pyruvic acid occurs during the process of, we know that before reading the choices, it's happening during the process of glycolysis inside the cytoplasm. Now let us see. Yes, the first choice that we have is glycolysis. Okay, uh, so that is the answer for the question. Now let us read question 19. Uh, it says, choose the pair that's correctly matched. So one of the pairs, one of the answers uh, is true among these five choices. Krebs cycle and cytoplasm, we know that this is not true. Krebs cycle takes place inside the matrix, not cytoplasm. Electron transport chain outer compartment of mitochondria. Again, this pair is not true. It should be inner membrane, inner compartment of the mitochondria. Glycolysis and crystal membrane. This is also not true. Glycolysis takes place inside the cytoplasm. Okay, not in the crystal membrane. As we know that electron transport chain takes place in the crystal membrane. Glycolysis and mitochondria also, these are not true. They are completely opposite of each other. Electron transport chain and crystal membrane. Yes, that's the answer for the question. And as we know that electron transport chain takes place in the crystal membrane, or we can say inner membrane. Okay, inner membrane of mitochondria. The last question that we have in this chapter is question 20. It says during strenuous exercise, it means during hard exercises, our skeletal muscle uses what, guys? As we know that in the beginning of exercise, it uses oxygen, O2, okay? And as we are continuing on our exercise, it produces large amount of what? Of lactic acid. We have to know that. Lactic acid is an acid that's produced during lactic acid fermentation, which it causes pain and fatiguing in the muscles. As uh, for example, we are not doing any exercise for a long period of time. When immediately we start by any exercise, we can feel a pain and fatigue in our muscles due to lactic acid in our muscles, because the amount of oxygen is not sufficient to produce a sufficient amount of ATP. So the answer for the question is D, in which oxygen will be used, and as a result the amount of oxygen will not be enough, so lactic acid will be produced, which causes pain for 2-3 days or maybe for a week. Then that lactic acid will be broken down and it returns to its normal state. So guys, that's it about cellular respiration. uh, If you have any question, I hope you understood all the parts that I explained. If you have any question, please write it in the comments and I will be ready for answering your question. Thank you so much for your listening. And that's it. Have a good day and take care.